O you who have believed, be persistently standing firm for Allah, witnesses in justice, and do not let the hatred of a people prevent you from being just. Even if it is against yourselves, your parents, or your relatives, be just, that is nearer to righteousness, and fear Allah. Indeed, Allah is acquainted with what you do. These words from the Quran, chapter 4, verse 135, ring truer than ever today. They remind us of our duty to uphold justice. As Muslim Americans, we stand at a crossroads. Our actions today will shape the future for generations to come. We face a critical choice in the upcoming election. It is a moment that calls for deep reflection and commitment. It's not simply about choosing a candidate. It's about choosing justice. It's about making a stand for what is right and fair. It's about standing against oppression. It's about ensuring that every voice is heard and every person is treated with dignity. This election demands we look beyond the familiar red and blue. It calls us to look deeper into our values and principles. We must ask ourselves, what does our faith demand of us in this moment? How can we be true to our beliefs and make a difference?
The situation in Palestine is a bleeding wound on the conscience of humanity. For decades, Palestinians have lived under a brutal occupation. They are denied basic human rights. Their land is confiscated. Their movement is restricted. Their voices are silenced. And what is America's role in this tragedy? We send billions of dollars in military aid to Israel every year. This aid directly fuels the occupation. It finances the bombs that rain down on Gaza. It pays for the bullets that pierce the hearts of innocent children. This is not an accident. It's a deliberate policy choice. And it's a choice that we, as Americans, are complicit in.
For too long, we have been told that we have only two choices, Democrat or Republican. This binary choice has limited our political imagination and stifled true democratic engagement. But both parties have failed us. They have perpetuated a system that benefits the few at the expense of the many. Both parties have turned a blind eye to the suffering in Palestine. They have ignored the cries for justice and human rights. Both parties have prioritized corporate interest over the needs of working families. They have catered to the wealthy and powerful, leaving ordinary citizens to struggle. The Biden-Harris administration promised change. They spoke of hope and progress, but they have continued the same failed policies of their predecessors. The promises of transformation have fallen flat. They have embraced the language of human rights while funding the very forces that violate them. Their actions speak louder than their words. The Trump administration was even worse. Their policies were marked by blatant disregard for decency and justice. Their open hostility towards Muslims was appalling. They sowed division and fear. Their policies were cruel and discriminatory. They targeted the most vulnerable among us. They emboldened white supremacists and stoked the flames of Islamophobia. They gave hate a platform. But let's be clear, Trump was not an anomaly. He was a product of a broken system. He was a symptom of a deeper sickness in our society, a sickness that we must confront and cure if we are to move forward.
The same system that oppresses Palestinians also oppresses marginalized communities here at home. Black and brown Americans face systemic racism and discrimination. Muslims are targeted by surveillance and profiling. Immigrants live in fear of deportation. The rich get richer while the poor struggle to survive. We cannot talk about justice abroad without addressing injustice at home. We need a government that represents all of us, not just the wealthy and powerful. We need a government that fights for justice, equality, and human rights. We need a government that reflects our values of compassion, empathy, and solidarity.
So what can we do? We can start by rejecting the false choice between two evils. We don't have to choose between bad and worse. We can choose a third way. We can choose to vote our conscience. We can choose to support candidates who share our values. We can choose to build a movement for justice that transcends party lines. This might mean voting for a third-party candidate. It might mean supporting grassroots organizations working for change. It might mean having difficult conversations with our families and communities. It won't be easy, but it's necessary.
Our faith teaches us to stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult. It calls us to be the voice for the voiceless and the strength for the weak. It teaches us to speak truth to power, to challenge injustice wherever it may be found. It teaches us to fight for justice, for ourselves and for all those who are oppressed, regardless of their background or beliefs. This election is a test of our faith, a test of our commitment to the principles we hold dear. It's a test of our humanity, a measure of our willingness to stand up for what is right. Let us pray for guidance, that we may see the path clearly. Let us pray for strength to endure the challenges that lie ahead. Let us pray for the courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult. And let us go out and vote our conscience, knowing that our votes are not just about choosing a president, but about shaping the future. They're about choosing justice, about standing up for what is right. They are about choosing humanity, about showing compassion and empathy. They are about choosing our souls, about making decisions that reflect our deepest values and beliefs.